Back in college, I was in a store buying some clothes, and while I was making my purchase, the salesperson at the register asked me who helped me, which is a reasonable question, but I panicked. I was like, he's tall, lean, dressed in gray slacks and a burgundy slim-fit V-neck sweater over a white collared shirt, loafers, short hair, brown eye. I would have told them his GPA if I had known it, and it would have helped. I said everything about that man, except that he was black. I had been raised to believe that the way to be a good, not racist, white person was to not see color, which is unhelpful. If you can't see color, you can't talk about color. And if you can't talk about race, gender, class, or ability, you can't understand it. You can't understand the part you play in it, and you can't understand the part it plays in you. Honestly, I was so bad at this. And partially it was difficult to confront and talk about because systems of oppression, and by that I mean racism, sexism, classism, ableism, among others, are both so massive, so baked into the structure of our lives, while their impacts are so personal, intimate even. They're in our heads and our hearts and our bedrooms. No matter who you are, they are currently, and I mean at this very moment, impacting your life and all of our lives in visible and invisible ways. But it's very easy in white liberal environments, by random example, to acknowledge that these systems exist, but to see them as these huge issues that are over there, not here. And as a product of a white liberal environment, it was almost too easy for me to not really see myself as part of this. So I vacillated between avoiding the conversation altogether and trying really hard to figure out how to say the exact right thing, which is difficult when you don't know what that is or fully understand the problem. To get better, to learn how to have direct and personal conversations about injustice, I needed practice. I needed time and I needed space dedicated to these discussions. Discussions that are grounded in the fact that these massive systems trickle down like rain, leaving us all in a permanent state of damp. Discussions that would allow me to move through shame, to learn how to be accountable, to practice being brave enough to try, even when I get it wrong, and to learn how to get it right. So, I made a game. I created a facilitated social justice card game because when we play games, at least 3 things happen. We all have to agree to a set of rules in order to play. We create safety, we build community, and we are put on the spot, but we are allowed to fail. After all, it's just a game. It's called Your Privilege is Showing, and it's an interactive and experiential approach to diversity training built on a 3-round card game. In each round, players get the chance to practice having the kinds of conversations that they avoid. In round 1, players get to practice recognizing and naming injustice in the world. In round 2, you get to reflect on and share social injustice in your own life. And in round 3, you get to answer complex questions under 2 minutes timed. In every round, you do some variation of listening to a scenario that's based on real-life current events and playing your cards. And there are race cards, sexism cards, and privilege cards, and I've broken those down into 3 levels of severity. Gray cards are microaggressions. They call out action or speech that have a lack of awareness in them, but generally no malice. And they might even be an attempt to help, like a boss telling a server, "You'll get better tips if you just unbutton that top button." Or a white person touching a black person's hair without asking because it's just so beautiful. Or asking a person of color where they're from, and when they answer saying, "Yeah, but where are you really from?" Yellow cards are what I call unnecessary roughness. Yellow cards call out action or speech that have willful ignorance in them and maybe even some malice, like when someone doesn't care that they're being offensive. And it's almost certainly yellow or above if they start off with, "I'm not racist or sexist, but..." Like someone saying, I'm not racist, but I just don't think that black football players are natural quarterbacks. Or, I'm cool with gay people, just don't shove it in my face. Or if a friend comes to you and says, I've got depression, I'm on some antidepressive meds, and you say, why? Depression is a choice. Just shake it off, it's all in your head. Red cards are the most severe, like a red card in soccer. Red cards are overt, systemic, deeply ignorant, and malicious. Like the fact that Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby both assaulted women over 30 years without consequence. Or when Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks said that people who lead good lives and do things the right way should pay less than those with pre-existing conditions. Or the fact that right now in Texas prisons, books by Langston Hughes and James Baldwin are banned, but Mein Kampf and books by white supremacists are allowed. You don't need to agree with my card choices, by the way. This isn't prescriptive. The point of the game isn't for us all to agree on what exactly we think is gray, yellow, or red. Depending on who you are and what you've been through that day, what could be a gray card to me could be yellow or even red to you. The conversation is the point. We choose what we think makes sense to us, and then we share and explore why. And sometimes we make mistakes. You kind of have to be willing to make mistakes in order to play this game at all. Which brings me to my favorite card in the whole deck, the That's Okay card. The That's Okay card is there to acknowledge and reward the bravery and the vulnerability required to admit our mistakes, because that's how we grow. The That's Okay card can be played by anyone at any time. It's worth 1/2 a point, and I encourage you to be generous. So, I made this game, and I look like this. I am an educated, middle-class white woman, and I think it's important to acknowledge that and also acknowledge that part of what has allowed me to create this game and then facilitate it is the privilege, the class privilege, the white privilege that I have. And because of that privilege, there is a chance that you don't think it's my place to do this kind of work, which is fine. My privilege is showing, and this is my way of grappling with and using it, hopefully for good. And every time I run a game with a new group of people, I always tell them that while this will be fun, and it will be, you're going to feel uncomfortable, and you are going to be bad at this. And that's because privileged people, by definition, we get less practice talking explicitly and directly about racism, about sexism, about privilege, the ways we feel about them, the ways we participate in them. And even for those of us like myself who do talk about them directly, there's always new things to learn and unlearn. So essentially what I'm trying to say is welcome. We are all terrible at this. So if you find yourself feeling defensive, if you notice shame creeping up unexpectedly, don't take that as a sign that you're doing it wrong. Take it as a sign that you're doing it right. And speaking of doing it right, it's a game. Is there a way to win? Why, yes, there is. But all you get if you win is a sticker I designed. It's a gold star that says you're a perfectly adequate human, because there is no winning in social justice. So I ran a pilot program at Berklee College of Music in fall 2016, in which a group of students played the game 4 times over the course of a semester. The students who signed up were all relatively aware, thought of themselves as actively good people who care about inclusion, equity, and justice. And even though they started out in a really solid place, throughout the course of the program, they still learned that they weren't as comfortable talking about these issues as they thought they were. They learned that being good people does not make you immune to racism or sexism. That, in fact, these problems are their problems, and they have a lot of work to do. They were surprised by how personal the experience was. They honestly did not expect it to hit home for them, to reach into their lives, to touch their friendships, their childhoods. But most of all, it was really important that they had a chance to come together regularly to play, because engaging with the discomfort of and our part in injustice is not something we get to just set and forget. It's a practice, like yoga, or meditation. This is something that if we do it, and we do it regularly, changes the way we understand and interact with the world. And we are never done. This is a process we will be continuing, if we're lucky, for our entire lives. Back when my parents were getting married, my white Anglo-Saxon Protestant mother was pregnant with my brother and marrying my father, who was Jewish. And this created tension and difficulty with their parents. My father's parents were embarrassed. My mother's parents were upset. This is a break on both sides of the family. It took years to heal. Fast forward, my parents have been married for 26 years. They have 3 children. And my grandfather, Bob, who had been raised in a family of farmers, was nearing the end of his life. During this time, my mother would fly out to Bismarck, North Dakota often to stay with her father. And at night, the two of them would lay side by side in his bed and talk. It was a sweet moment for both of them, a moment of easy togetherness after a lifetime of love, misunderstanding, and difficulty. And as they lay there in silence one night, my grandfather suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Hybrids." What? My mother had no idea what he was talking about. "Hybrids," he said again. "That's why those kids are so amazing. They're hybrids." This is what I mean by intimate. This was my grandfather, however imperfectly, finally accepting his daughter's choice to marry a man of a different culture and faith, and to be able to see the good that's come out of it. These are the choices that led to my birth, shaped my life. It doesn't get more personal than that. My goal for this game is that it help us be better sooner, but the cards are a tool. They don't matter, not really. I've run games without the cards with friends in bars. Just begin. Practice recognizing and naming injustice in your life, and then do something about it. Apologize and do better. Stand up and say something even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you. This is a lifelong process, and all we can do is begin. But we have to do at least that. You are all perfectly adequate. Thank you.